Hello poker enthusiasts! Many poker players would like to improve their red line winnings, which stand for money won without going to showdown. My student Stuart definitely doesn't have that problem. His red line is shooting straight up. But this isn't always a good thing, and today we're going to review a few hands that he played online. The main focus is on hand reading and figuring out when you are actually beat. So let's dive right into them.
So Hero has King Queen offsuit here in the cutoff, raises it up and gets called by the big blind. King 7 deuce with 2 club. This is a board that you can range bet, so that would be a small bet, but it's not a mistake, especially exploitatively, to go bigger here and charge hands like pocket 8s, possibly even pocket 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, flush draws, weaker kings. This is what Hero does here, so that's absolutely fine. But now we get check raised here. Not loving this, but on the other hand, absolutely nowhere to go here with top pair and also a good kicker, and the queen of clubs is a bit of an insurance. And now unfortunately the river is the jack of clubs. That is a very bad card for us, and the big blind should now lead small here, but he goes very big. He goes about 80% pot here, and at this point I'd be thinking, well, what does he have? Does he do this with a set? Does he do this with the complete bluff, or has he hit his flush now? But because we have the queen of clubs, it's definitely still a call here. Without a club in our hand, I think we should fold here. And now the river is a blank pretty much. I mean, yeah, queen 9 get there, but I doubt that he has that. So now when he rips it, I think this is an easy fold here, because unless he has absolutely only air in his hand, we are behind, and I think he only does this with a flush, and indeed he does. Unfortunately, our hero called here, and he was shown the bad news in form of the nuts. A very similar hand here, this time King Queen suited. In the low jack get called by the big blind. Queen 8-6 with 2 diamonds. We bet big. This is actually a little too big in my opinion, but again, exploitatively it might be fine. Again, we get check raised here despite our big bet, so just keep that in mind. If you get check raised after betting pretty big, that usually is quite strong or a strong draw. Here we have to call, obviously, with top pair, good kicker. Now he continues pretty big. He could do this with still some draws. The 2 of spades is definitely not improving him, so I'm totally on board with calling here. And the river is not exactly a blank, because 7-5 get there, but that's the only hand, and he now rips it. At this point, I think I can't fault anyone for calling here, but at small stakes, I just think this can be a set more often than not. The way it's played, not many players check raise and then bet turn and rip river with a bluff. So I would probably fold here, but as I said, calling is not a huge mistake, at least in theory, although I do think at these stakes it is a mistake. And we see the 7-5 indeed. It was the 7-5 of diamonds. Villain had a massive draw here on the flop when he check raised us, and then he got there on the river. So unfortunately we lost this one as well. Okay, this one is mainly a pre-flop one. Hero makes it 3x in the low jack with ace jack off. I think this is too big, just make it 2 or 2.2. Here we get 3-bet by the hijack, folds back to us, and Hero decides to call. And this is a mistake. There is actually a simple trick here that you can remember, except if you're in the cutoff in the button 3-bets, you never ever call any offsuit hand out of position to a 3-bet. So if you have ace king off, you can 4-bet here. With ace queen off, you can sometimes 4-bet, sometimes fold, and every other offsuit hand just folds. But here, okay, we call, we get ourselves into this pickle here. Queen 9-8, we have a gut shot and an overcard. We check, and thankfully the hijack checks behind. Now on this brick deuce here on the turn, we could either lead or just check. I think this is a good spot to just take a stab with an overcard and a gut shot. Hero goes the check line, and now villain bets half pot. If he bets smaller, we definitely have a call, if not even a check raise here. Against a bigger bet, I would fold. With this in-between bet here, it's tough, but I think we don't get the direct odds to call. But do we have a lot of implied odds if we hit? I don't really think so, because we would have to lead the river then, and if we lead the river big on a 4 straight, if the 10 comes for example, we will not even get called necessarily by a queen, let alone by something like pocket jacks or pocket 10s, which then are a set. I don't know, I think I would just let this one go. But Hero calls, fair enough, and he calls mainly because he knew that the 10 was coming on the river, and now he leads out. But that's exactly what I was saying, he leads out for a quarter pot, and yes, he gets called, and we win a nice pot against the 10s that rivered a set here. However, if we look back at the pot odds here, getting 3-1, so we need to have about 25% equity, which we don't do. We only had about 10% here, and it means that we have to make around 70 to 75 big blinds here on top of what's in the pot now, and we only make 10. So I just think overall this is still a losing play, and that is precisely why I think a fold on the turn would be best. We have a raise in the hijack, a cold call from the cutoff. We have king jack suited in the small blind. Now you could call here, definitely shouldn't fold here. I think squeezing is the best play, but if you do so, go to about 13.5, 14, even 15 big blinds. Hero just goes a little small here to 11. This is just not great, because now the hijack is quite incentivized to call, and with the hijack calling, the cutoff is almost priced in, so he will call as well. Now you flop something that's not great. It's not absolutely terrible, because you have some backdoors and 2 overcards, but it's not great. Against 1 player you could consider c-betting big on this board, but against 2 players I would just check. And now we face a half pot bet by the cutoff. So I think this one is already a fold here, especially because of the players behind us. Again, if it were heads up, I might check raise this one here, but against 2 players I would just fold. Instead, Hero elects to call here out of position with a hand that's not much at the moment. The other player gets out of the way, and now the flush comes in. And so this was another one I forgot to mention. So Hero only started the hand with 75 big blinds deep. Just don't do that. If you think that you have an edge on the other players, just always top up to the maximum, which in this case would be 100 big blinds. So we only have 48 big blinds behind us, and that's another reason to fold flop, because there are not many implied odds here to warrant a call. So here, when the flush comes in on the turn, and now our hero just jams and he gets snapped off. And before we look at the reveal, just one thing: consider what would you have done if you had had king jack of hearts here, or pocket 10s or something like that. Would you really have taken this line once the flush comes in, and with such a small SPR and with even the river card to come? Would you have just donk jammed here? And the answer is most likely no, which means that you shouldn't play your bluffs like this either, because no one will believe you. Like, if villain has a 10 here, he will most likely not fold, especially not to this smallish jam here. And in this case, as we can see now, he even had 2 pair, although this is an absolutely wacky play here from our villain to call 10-7 off in the cutoff, and then to also call the 3-bet with that hand. So this must be an absolute fish. However, I think that we should still have gotten away on the flop when we had the chance to do so. In this hand we see why our hero has such a good red line. So he opens ace queen suited here in the hijack, gets 3-bet by the cutoff, and then my normal reaction would be, with a hand as good as this one, to just call here. But you can 4-bet in GTO territory, and that's exactly what our red line hero does here. So it's a fine play, but I think we have good playability with this one, so we might just call. He now 4-bet, as I said, and gets called by the cutoff. 10-9 deuce is not a great board. We would most likely not 4-bet 10s, definitely, or not definitely, but most likely not 4-bet 9s. We don't have deuces, and villain can have 10s and 9s here, but we do have aces, kings, queens, jacks in our range, so we still have the range advantage here. So we can go for a bet. Because SPR is only just over 2, we can go about a quarter pot bet, but we can check, that's also fine here, that's what hero does. Villain checks behind, and now the 3 of diamond comes in. This is a total blank, so we can now check again and just hope to win against a weaker hand. The problem is we probably won't get jacks plus or a 10 to fold here, so I don't mind the check here. Now that we get this annoyingly small bet by villain here, yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I wouldn't fold here to such a small bet, and our hero now check raises. Yeah, what are you repping here? You can still have aces, kings, playing them passively, but then would you really get believed by our villain? I don't know, but I don't think it's a bad play to check raise here. We can fold out probably a hand like ace-king now at this point, but we won't fold out a hand like jacks plus or any diamond. Yeah, so we could get called by worse here, but not by a lot. Something like ace-jack of diamonds precisely, or king-jack, king-queen, queen-jack, all of the diamonds. So it's not actually a bad play. We do get called here, and on this blankish river, we now jam here, and I don't think that anything that called us on the turn will fold now. Up to this point, I think the hand was played well by our hero, but here on the river, I genuinely believe that not a lot that called you will fold here. The only hands that fold now would be missed diamond draws, and except for ace-king of diamonds, we beat all of those, and so I think this is a bad jam here, and indeed we get called by a set of 10s. I mean, this hand never folds anyway, but even pocket jacks I think don't fold here, and that's why I think the river jam was not a good play. Off to the next one. There is a raise in the low jack, and we have ace-8 suited here in the cutoff. This is a hand that you can either fold or 3-bet against the 3x raise from the low jack. I might be inclined to fold this a little more, but on the other hand, it's really nice to actually go for the 3-bet as well, which hero does. That's what a good red line player does anyway. Get called by the low jack, and we flop top pair, top kicker, checks to us, we go big, which we should, so this is a board that we can either check or bet big, but I think for protection it's nice to bet here, because we are happy to just fold out hands like king jack of diamonds or something like that, so well done hero on this one. But then this happens, this guy just jams it for 130 big blinds effective, for what is that, an SPR of 6.5. Really weird. I mean, yeah, maybe does he do that with something like slow played aces or kings, and now he's panicking because of the low cards and the draws here? I'm not sure. I mean, this is a tricky one, but I think you kind of have to call it off here, because you can still have a lot of draws, and yeah, hero decides to call it off, and what do we see? The ace-6 offsuit. I mean, he has a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw, and he got there with not even the gut shot, we got there with a backdoor straight draw somehow. Yeah, very weird play here by villain, and unfortunately he got rewarded for that weird play, but I think hero did well in this one. In this last hand we have a familiar mistake. Let's see if you can spot it. We open ace-jack offsuit in the hijack, get 3-bet by the button, it folds back to us, and what should we do here with our ace-jack offsuit? The answer is of course fold, as we said before, except if you're in the cutoff you never ever call a 3-bet out of position with an unsuited hand. And especially if we are super deep, and we are super deep here, we're over 230 big blinds deep, and this is just a massively losing play if you call here, and unfortunately Hero did that. But we flop top 2 pair, life is great, we check, villain goes pretty big, which, because we are so deep, I don't fully mind, but still I think I would prefer a smaller bet in his shoes. We check raise here, and this is good at this point, because if villain has ace king or ace queen, we have a good situation here. However, just consider that we are super deep, and if a lot of money goes into the pot here, I'm still not very confident that our top 2 pair are good. And now this happens, he min clicks it to 56, so alarm bells really start ringing at this point. I mean, I'm not folding here now to this min click, but I'm not really that certain that we have the best hand anymore. So we call, we still have 172 big blinds behind, 130 in the middle. We check, he now goes 95, which is pretty big, and the question is, does he really do that with ace king or ace queen? I'm not so sure. Does he do it with king queen, king 10, something like that? Most likely not, unless he's like a total wacko. So I don't know, I wouldn't say we should fold here, but then he only has 77 behind, that will most likely get in there too. So Hero just decides to rip it in himself now. I mean, yeah, if you decide to go with your hand, you might as well, because if he really does that with ace king or ace queen, then at least you'll stack him this way, otherwise you might just check behind on the river. But I think I probably would have just folded here, and we get called and we lose to pocket jacks. So I'm not surprised to see jacks here. I thought jacks or aces make total sense, and I just don't think many players would do this with ace king, which is why I would just have folded on the turn, even though this looks very nitty.
Stuart's red line comes at a cost, as we just saw in the videos, but I think there isn't much that he has to improve. He just needs to call down a bit less to figure out when he's actually beat, and also to bluff a bit smarter. But it is much easier to become a good loose aggressive player for someone like him than it is for someone like me, for example, who used to be a total nit. So keep studying, Stuart, and everybody else. And if you want to watch more student hand reviews, then click on the video here. Thanks for watching.